Warning: this podcast includes real stories about accidents, deaths, and ghost stories. Some content may be scary or upsetting for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. We do not intend to defame or misrepresent any business or individuals involved. All accounts are shared respectfully and are based on publicly available sources. My story started today with a single roller coaster, but the research led me further down the rabbit hole. You are listening to Death-Kissed Traveler, the haunted side of amusement parks, where thrill rides meet the undead, and the past is never truly past. I'm your morbidly curious host, Marissa, and today we are traveling to Lagoon in Farmington, Utah. In Lagoon, there stands a roller coaster that has stood for more than 100 years. It's older than Mickey Mouse, Mount Rushmore, and sliced bread. It has weathered storms, fire, and time itself. Generations have climbed its wooden hills, screamed through its drops, and whispered the legends about what lingers in the shadows of its frame. It's not just a ride, it's a monument to thrill, survival, and maybe the unseen. Lagoon began as Lake Park Resort, a bathing and recreational area on the shores of the Great Salt Lake. Opened in 1886, guests arrived by train to swim, dance, and enjoy picnics. Due to environmental changes on the lake, the resort moved inland in 1899 to Farmington and was renamed Lagoon, named after the small body of water on the new site. For more lake park information, listen to the last episode of Death-Kissed Traveler. In the early 1900s, Lagoon blossomed into a true amusement park. It added gardens, a midway, a swimming pool, and eventually rides, including a hand-carved carousel in 1906, and now the iconic roller coaster in 1921. Lagoon was billed as the Coney Island of the West. In the dead of winter, January 1918, a new force arrived at Lagoon. A.C. Christensen, freshly appointed manager and brimming with ambition. He had just returned from California, where he had walked among the palm-lined paths of America's most dazzling resorts, studying every thrill, every innovation, and when he came back to Farmington, he brought with him a vision that would forever change Lagoon. Up to that point, Lagoon was a peaceful escape, gardens, shaded paths, and the still waters of the lake. But Christensen saw something bigger, something bolder. He wanted a lagoon to electrify. His first move? A carousel. This carousel still stands today. Next, he turned the sleepy swimming hole into Waikiki Beach, hauling in trainloads of California sand to give Utahns their first taste of the tropics. But he was just getting started. By 1910, Lagoon had introduced the captive airplane ride, a towering steel structure where riders soared over the lake in swinging planes, feet dangling above the water. Then came 1920, the aging scenic railway, once a beloved favorite, was removed. A new beast began to rise. Taller, longer, louder, the new roller coaster would tower 20 feet above its predecessor and stretch nearly 500 feet further into the horizon. In 1920, construction crews used horses to haul lumber, and all of it was nailed by hand. No cranes, no hydraulics, just manpower and muscle. Unlike steel coasters, the wooden frame actually shifts and flexes as the train passes over it. If you look closely while waiting in line, you might see parts of the track slightly move. This give is part of what makes wooden roller coasters their rattling, wild personality. The roller coaster uses a manual braking system. Actually, the ride still uses a hand-operated braking system, meaning a real person controls when and how the train slows at the end. Operators are trained to feel the timing. There's no automated braking system like modern coasters. old school system gives it that classic clunk and rattle at the end of the ride. The roller coaster wasn't just a ride, it was a declaration. Lagoon was no longer just a garden, it was a kingdom of thrills. When it opened in 1921, it was considered a giant roller coaster, towering over nearly every other ride west of the Mississippi. It stood as a landmark for train passengers arriving from Salt Lake City, visible across Farmington's farmland. And that wooden giant, it still stands today. This wooden out-and-back roller coaster opened in 1921. Designed by John A. Miller, a pioneer in coaster safety and engineering. Over his lifetime, he designed over 150 roller coasters. Many are still standing today. He designed rides all over the country, Coney Island, Six Flags America, and even state fairs. Miller patented over 100 key roller coaster components, like the safety chain dog, the device that keeps coasters from rolling backwards and gives it that click, 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 click noise. He is widely considered the father of the modern high-speed roller coaster. Frederick Church also played a huge part in the design of the coaster. He helped innovate the out-and-back wooden coaster style, straight out and then loops back. It's a classic early design. He is most famous for a series of roller coasters that featured severe banking, steep drops, and non-stop action. The general contractor was Benjamin E. Smith, a Utah resident who was born in New York. As a boy, he helped build the Brooklyn Bridge. Later, he moved to Colorado, which is probably when he got involved with the Colorado Coaster Construction Company that built Lagoon's coaster. Smith was also the general contractor on the park's first funhouse. The roller coaster's top height is 62 feet. It is about 2,500 feet of track, and its top speed is 45 miles an hour. When it opened, it was considered one of the finest wooden roller coasters in the country, featuring steep drops, tight turns, and airtime hills that delivered thrills well beyond its modest height. It cost around $50,000 to $75,000 depending on the source, over $800,000 today. But today, most wooden roller coasters cost $5 to $10 million to build due to labor, land, and material cost. The roller coaster is one of the only few coasters from the 1920s still operating in the U.S., and it's often praised by coaster enthusiasts for its classic wooden feel, strong airtime, and nostalgic charm. It's been featured in travel documentaries, coaster rankings, and ghost story specials. When it opened, the ride was called the Lagoon Dipper, but that name faded by the 1940s. In 1947, after a station upgrade and the arrival of sleek silver trains, it was briefly known as the Silver Coaster. By 1954, a neon sign declared it the Giant Coaster, and eventually it simply became known as the roller coaster, a name used so often it's hard to tell when it officially stuck. Locals have long called it the White Roller Coaster, a nickname that likely began around World War II. Though it hasn't been painted white in years, the name still lingers. I still call it the White Roller Coaster. An advertisement in the Utah's Daily Chronicle of May 27, 1921, called Lagoon Utah's greatest pleasure resort and the Coney Island of the West. The ad also referred to Lagoon's Dipper as the wildest ride you've ever took. Random fact, in the center of that giant trek, goats roamed the grounds until 2001. It stands like a skeleton against the sky. Aged wood, bolts worn by time, and tracks that groan with every turn. To most, it's just a roller coaster. But to those who know its story, it's something much more. In 1923, Lagoon received massive amounts of flooding from a rainy summer. Concrete footings on the roller coaster were replaced after they were damaged by the flooding in August. The ride started to crumble and could not operate after the flooding. According to the Mystery of Utah History, the first death on the roller coaster was George Burt. He was 19 years old, and Bert was making his fourth ride of the night and was insistent on standing up during the ride. He eventually lost his balance, slipped out, and hung onto the car. He was dragged 30 feet down one incline and partially up another before he lost his grip and suffered the fatal fall. Reports show that George had a broken neck, and at the time, the cars did not have proper safety restraints. This death cannot be confirmed, but it is worth noting because it is on several sites. Another confirmed tragic incident occurred on August 20th, 1934, involving a 21-year-old Ogden man named Henry Howe, also reported as Ernest Howe. Ernest was riding the roller coaster, and as the train reached the first and highest hill, Howe stood up mid-ride, either for a thrill or to impress, nobody knows. His balance gave out, and he plummeted from the train. As he fell, he struck multiple wooden support trusses before landing on the ground, and he died on impact with a fractured skull. In 1947 and 1970, new streamlined cars, a new lighting system, modern loading platforms, and steel reinforcements for curbs were added. This was not the last time these cars were updated, and I have to wonder how wildly scary and awful the original cars were, because to this day, this ride is rough. It bounces and shakes you, and it really jerks you around on the turns. Another confirmed incident happened in 1946. James Hess was 23 years old and working on scaffolding around the wooden roller coaster. While positioned on the scaffolding, he was struck by a passing coaster train, suffering catastrophic injuries, including internal bleeding and fractured bones. He was rushed to a Salt Lake City hospital, where he died on September 1st, 1946. At that time, Lagoon's wooden roller coaster was nearly 25 years old and routinely went under maintenance atop the structure. Protocols during such maintenance were not as rigorous as modern standards. Workers were often in close proximity to active coaster tracks. This incident was a grim reminder of the danger to park employees. It may have contributed to later safety reforms, including better work zone barricades and ride operation coordination. On the evening of November 14, 1953, disaster struck Lagoon Amusement Park. A devastating fire broke out on the park's beloved wooden roller coaster. The fire began in the storage area beneath the coaster, where maintenance workers had been conducting off-season repairs. The cause was believed to be an electrical short or a spark from a work area, possibly involving paint or other flammable materials being stored or used nearby. In a structure made almost entirely of dry timber, it didn't take long for the flames to surge out of control. High winds that night fanned the blaze, and within minutes, flames engulfed a large section of the western side of the roller coaster, including a portion of the track and wooden supports. According to eyewitness accounts, the fire lit up the sky for miles, and thick smoke could be seen from Salt Lake City. Local fire departments rushed to the scene, but they were battling not just the blaze, but time. The maze-like structure of wooden beams and the elevated track made it difficult to reach the flames. Crews worked for hours, desperately trying to contain the fire before it could spread to the rest of the park. When the flames were finally put out, a large section of the coaster, reportedly about 1/3 of the structure, was left charred and crumbling. For many, it seemed like the end of the roller coaster. After all, rebuilding such an old wooden coaster from the 1920s seemed unlikely. But instead of scrapping it, Lagoon made a bold decision that they would rebuild the roller coaster from the original blueprints. The reconstruction began almost immediately, using the same out-and-back layout designed by coaster pioneer John A. Miller. It was an ambitious undertaking, but Lagoon saw it as vital to preserving its history and identity. By the following summer, the roller coaster was reborn, with repairs complete and a fresh coat of paint symbolizing not just the restoration, but the resilience. It was at this time that the nickname, the White Roller Coaster, began to gain traction because of the fresh coat of white paint used during reconstruction. The last tragedy occurred on June 9, 1989. 13-year-old Kylie King of Bountiful, Utah, died after plunging about 35 feet from Lagoon's wooden roller coaster. She was seated in the front car when it crested the second hill. Witnesses reported that she raised her arms and straightened her legs against the lap bar, apparently trying to get air, and she slipped beneath the train, plunging downward, falling out of the moving car. South Davis Fire Department personnel confirmed she was pronounced dead at the scene. According to Deseret News reporter Don Rosebrock, King had a season pass to Lagoon and had ridden the roller coaster multiple times prior to the deadly incident. An extensive investigation by Farmington police, led by Detective Sergeant Jeff Jacobson, concluded her death was a tragic accident. A quirk of physics, he explained, that Kylie's small stature, 5'3" and 71 pounds, combined with her forward and upward motion at the hill's crest, allowed her to slide underneath the locking lap bar, not because of a malfunction. Lagoon immediately shut down the coaster for inspection. Before reopening, they moved the seats slightly forward in each car to reduce the slipping risk under the restraint. Legal action followed. In late July 1989, Kylie's mother, Susan King, sued Lagoon in Davis County District Court, alleging negligence in the coaster's design, operation, maintenance, and insufficient safety restraints that reportedly allowed her daughter to be thrown out. Around the same time, a state legislator introduced a bill for mandatory annual inspections of amusement park rides, seeking to prevent tragedies like this. Kylie King's death was ruled an accidental tragedy, caused by the unique interplay of her physical characteristics and coaster's physics, not by equipment failure. Although, in 1990, Lagoon introduced further safety measures, including the installation of individual ratcheting lap bars and the implementation of a policy prohibiting single riders in the front or back rows. These modifications were part of the park's ongoing efforts to improve ride safety and prevent similar accidents in the future. Still, a sign at the top of the first hill reads, "Do not stand." New trains were introduced in 2018, and the wooden structure is continuously replaced in sections. It's safe to say that nothing from the original 1921 coaster is left, replaced piece by piece. However, the design and the layout of the ride, along with its drops and twists, are still based on the original. Seasonal flooding and Utah's extreme weather have weathered its wood, yet it continues to run thanks to constant maintenance and replacements. The roller coaster is now a designated ACE roller coaster landmark and is listed on the National Registration of Historic Places, as well as the American Coaster Enthusiasts named Lagoon's roller coaster a coaster landmark and awarded the park with a plaque at a ceremony. Though not officially labeled haunted, employees and guests have reported orbs, cold spots, and unsettling noises. Coaster fans say the ride feels faster and more intense at night. Cooler air and increased humidity help the trains glide smoother and quicker over the tracks. Some guests say the second hill at night feels different. In my research, I found Lagoon's roller coaster has sisters with eerily similar tragedies. These 3 roller coasters that are similar layouts and engineered by John Miller and Frederick Church. Both of these sisters are named the Giant Dipper, one located in Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk and the other in Belmont Park, both in California. The Giant Dipper in Santa Cruz opened in 1924 and is considered an iconic landmark of the park and the city. It spans 2,600 feet and features a 75-foot drop and reaches speeds up to 48 miles an hour. Since its debut in 1924, the Giant Dipper at Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk has become a beloved icon of California's coastline. But behind the charm and nostalgia, this wooden giant carries a chilling record. At least 4 riders have died on this very track, each one in nearly an identical, horrifying way. They all stood up. The first tragedy struck just months after the coaster opened. On September 21, 1924, 16-year-old Walter Fernald Brine stood as the train plunged down its first drop. In an instant, he was thrown forward, landing directly on the track, and was crushed beneath the very ride he'd climbed aboard for fun. Nearly 2 decades later, on March 30, 1943, James Piner, just 19, made the same fatal mistake. He stood up during the ride and was flung onto the roof of the tunnel. But his fall didn't stop there. He rolled off onto a catwalk, fracturing his skull and suffering deep lacerations. He died in the hospital 2 days later. Then came July 6, 1958. 22-year-old Peter Alfred Abila reported slipping out from beneath his lap bar. Whether it was a dare, panic, or a tragic misjudgment, no one really knows. But he tumbled 65 feet onto the ground and was killed instantly. And finally, on July 13, 1972, 13-year-old Edward Crooks fell from the top section of the ride structure. He dropped down onto the lower tracks and was hit head-on by the coaster train, his young life ending in one of the most gruesome incidents in the park history. Though no mechanical failures were blamed in these cases, they left a dark imprint on the ride's legacy. Safety protocols were tightened, restraints were reinforced, but the stories remain. And if you ask longtime employees or listen closely at night, some say the Giant Dipper holds on to those memories. A local ghost directory notes multiple strange sightings around the coaster. They report a lone boy, dressed in early 20th century clothing. He's been reported seen seated in the back car by the ride operators, only to vanish when they check the car at the end of the ride. Operators also claim to feel tugging at their sleeves or taps on the shoulder when no one is nearby. Guests occasionally report a sudden chill in the air, especially near that second hill, where they sense something unseen is riding along with them. Psychics and staff have claimed to see orbs and shadowy figures walking along the boardwalk spur lines, including ghostly visitors vanishing before friends can follow. The Giant Dipper may be the crown jewel of Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, but it's far from the only part of this seaside park that whispers with history, and maybe even something darker. From drowned swimmers beneath Neptune's kingdom to ghostly children spotted in the tunnels, Santa Cruz isn't just a playground. It's a relic layered with joy, tragedy, and legend, which is why I'm dedicating an entire episode to this place very soon. The third sister we're discussing opened on July 4th, 1925, as part of the Mission Beach Amusement Center, created by John D. Spreckles to promote his real estate and trolley ventures. The coaster stands 75 feet tall, drops 60 to 65 feet, and spans 2,600 feet. It reaches speeds of 48 miles per hour. A major fire in February of 1955 damaged the ride, which closed for over a year until it reopened in 1957. The park rebranded as Belmont Park in 1955, and by 1976, Both the park and the coaster shut down amid despair, vandalism, and financial troubles. A grassroots Save the Coaster committee helped prevent the demolition, securing landmark protections in 1978 through 1987. And in 1989, the San Diego Coaster Company began restoration, and by August 11, 1990, the coaster reopened after a $2 million rebuild. New trains, bolts, track, and safety systems were installed. It's the only roller coaster in Belmont Park and operates year-round, undergoing rigorous inspections every 2 hours. The Giant Dipper in Belmont Park does not have the dark history of its sisters. In truth, the only recorded death at the park was that of a Navy sailor who threw himself off the roller coaster at the highest peak in the late 1950s. These amazing roller coasters have stood the test of time. They have earned their scars. Fire licked at their frames in the dead of night. Flood swallowed their feet. And some riders never came back. Each death carved a mark into the wood. And some believe the rides never forgot. They say wood holds memory. These coasters, they're full of them. So when your train clicks up that hill and the wind grows still, listen. Because the screams you hear might not be from the living. Thank you for joining me on this dark journey through the roller coaster's forgotten past. Until we meet again, beware of the echoes that haunt the breeze. And remember, some rides never stop spinning, even beyond the grave. This is Marissa with Death Kiss Traveler. Thank you for joining me where history blurs with mystery. The past never truly leaves. It waits in silence, ready to be uncovered again. Thank you for listening to Death Kiss Traveler. Please subscribe, comment, and share this podcast. I appreciate your support in making this podcast successful. This podcast is researched and written by me, Marissa Benson. All show notes and sources are found in the link below. Produced by Sunkissed Traveler. Looking for a fun, stress-free vacation? Visit www.sun-kissedtraveler.com. Link in the show notes.